Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Founder, the podcast that tells the real stories of the people who make recruitment agency growth possible. I go straight to the source to discover the impact of great strategic partnerships between founders and their leadership teams, and uncover why bringing in the right leadership team is crucial for the founder to build the business they want. We discuss what it takes to build a fulfilling career in agency without necessarily being a founder yourself, and share the successes of the key people that, alongside the founder, make the agency work. It's unfiltered, honest, and unscripted, and gives a real insight into the people that make the agency work beyond the founder. So on today's episode, I am delighted to be joined by Craig Whiting, one of the founders of RLS Search, who are a specialist headhunting agency focused in the hedge fund world. It's big ticket stuff. It's really complex and niche hiring, but they seem to have absolutely nailed their core offering. And today, Craig is such an engaging guy. His story is excellent, and we'll learn the challenges that come with starting a business with someone you're really close to, but you have different viewpoints in which way you want it to go. We'll talk about how you navigate remote versus office-based working, the challenges that come with trying to grow a business out from different continents. They've got a really successful business that works over 3 continents. And we'll talk about why finding your joy and working out where you're best fit is so important in this day and age. It's packed full of other insights, including how to leverage technology best, how to stay ahead of the game, and how to innovate to make sure you're best in class. And what really comes out in this episode is how quality trumps quantity every time. I really hope you get good value from this. So let's get straight into it. So Craig, thank you so much for joining me on the Beyond the Founder podcast. Obviously, I know exactly who you are, but if you don't mind giving us a couple of minutes on RLS Search, who you are, and just introduce the business, and we'll go from there.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me. So we are predominantly a headhunting-based company. We work with hedge funds around the world, focused on technology, recruitment, basically supporting their needs front to back. So everything from very front office, very trading heavy, all the way back to regulation and accounting and that sort of thing. Anything within the technical sphere, we do. And then we work globally based on their needs. So all the main financial hubs, but then also they'll have these little pop-up sites, around the world where they'll spin up sites around good people. So yeah, kind of recruitment, but very refined, very niched, very tight vertical in that our client base is very centralized.
Okay, and that's a mega super niche, but it's also, and we'll come on to this later, it's also a very lucrative niche. And so how does one get into working with hedge funds and certainly around technology? It's interesting.
When I started, I fell into recruiting tech for banks, purely by that's the team that hired me. And
when would this have been, Craig?
This was 2008.
Right, okay.
So banking crisis, a really good time to be doing that. But naturally, you start to sort of see that world a little bit, and hedge funds are a big and important part of it. And they were always considered, I think, in the first business I was at, Huxley, of like hedge funds were like the holy grail of they're really difficult to kind of break into and to work with, but they're the clients that you want because typically they're looking to hire the best people in the world and they pay big money. So naturally that trickles down in terms of fee values and that sort of thing. But the level of rigor that they demand in terms of the service that you need to provide and, how you have to represent them in the market and, the quality of the candidates, et cetera, is so high that, you need to bring a lot more to the table as an agency than if you're recruiting for banks, for example, where it's like very transactional. So there was always this, the hedge fund world. And naturally, like recruiters are quite driven by where's the dollars. So it's always like, well, look, this is where all the kind of the pot of gold's over there. So how do you upskill yourself enough to become a player in that space? And then, when we set the business up in 2014, we were very clear on the target market that we wanted to go after. And then we won a hedge fund, quite a big fund fairly early, like a little bit spot business. And then it was like, right, everything on this. And then filled that another couple of roles. And then it just, over time, it expanded out. And then the other thing about that industry is everyone knows it's a little bit incestuous. So all of a sudden, these other funds were turning up saying, we've heard you're doing this for X, Y, Z. Can you do it for us? So we've never really done new business, but we've now got like a really good portfolio of like hedge fund clients and trading clients that look after us, and they've helped us kind of scale, and we operate really, I guess, as like partners to them, as opposed to we've our biggest client we've worked with now for 10 years. So
this is interesting. So, and I just want to take it back, and it's like 4 or 5 different takeaways there that I want to get into over the course of the next half an hour or so. But so you started in Huxley in 2008. You were trained, had a good period there, decent training, went into the hedge fund world, in quant trading, was it?
No, it's still software engineers, your project managers, BAs, some quant dev type things. We don't do so much of the trading side. So the real, portfolio managers, strats, research, there's better agencies than us for that sort of thing. And it's a weird market where you might do 2 or 3 deals a year, but they'll be really big deals. Our style is much more on the, I guess, a little bit more transactional. So there's a lot more roles. The values are not as high, but you're going to get a lot more jobs.
Yeah, because on the big end, it's 1 or 2 roles a year, massive salaries.
Yeah, it's not a lot of fun though. Like a lot of these people have non-competes.
Yeah.
So you place someone, then you're waiting a year for them to start. Yeah. Then you're hoping that they don't kind of just end up going back to market and taking another job in that time. So it's a year of hand holding. Then you've got to wait to get paid. It's a very long lead time, when in that time you could do, a number of deals in our space to achieve the same sort of value anyway.
So did you go straight from Huxley to RLS, or was there anything?
No. So I was approached in 2011 by a rec-to-rec, James Ward, who was representing Stott and May. So Steve Stott basically was part of the exit at Huntress. He walked with a bunch of money, as I understand it. He set up Stott and May. They were cherry picking the best people in London and trying to create a really good team of established people. So I think it was like you had to have billed 300K and you had to have done this, whatever. So they brought me in, and then this guy, Dan, who's my business partner now, Dan and I met. Our job was to build a finance technology practice. So we started working with different hedge funds and also some banks in that time.
So they didn't have it.
Yeah, they had nothing. Yeah. And then Dan and I, we worked together, but we also hit it off. We are really good mates, and we were into a lot of the same things, and we just became really good friends. And then it was like a natural evolution into RLS from Stott and May in end of 2014.
What's RLS stand for?
Rolling Line Studio. So Dan is a Grammy-nominated record producer. And his studio was called the Rolling Line Studio. So it became RLS Search, and I had no better ideas. So I think it's cool. I mean, now it's just like, it's just RLS, but I was
thinking Dan Craig, there's no R and there's no LS.
No, there's just this cool story, and he did a couple of like reggae albums and got nominated for Grammys and stuff. So when people ask, it's kind of like a decent segue sort of thing.
Yeah.
But
to be fair, it's definitely a good story, and I like that.
Yeah.
And so just getting back onto point, you start in May. You then make the decision between yourself and Dan, you want to start on your own. You see the potential in it, you recognise you can do it differently, whatever the reasons, I'm sure you'll tell us. Was there restricted covenants? Was there things you had to do differently?
No, not really, no. So, I mean, my motivation at that point was I was fed up with London, and I just wanted to work remotely. Because my kids at the time, I had 2 kids, now I've got 3. They were really young. I was living in Kent. It's quite a long commute. I was leaving the house at 5:30, getting home at sometimes 8, 8:30, 9 o'clock
2 young kids at this point.
I never saw them. Like and it got to a point where I became like not very good at my job anymore, because I was so disillusioned with it and disenfranchised. I think by industry standards, I was probably still like the upper end of average, but relative to where I was at Huxley, I was nowhere near as good, because I just wasn't. I was there like. I wasn't motivated.
You're running a team. Do you have
No, a little bit, but it was more just, I just associated work now with like, this is the thing that keeps me from my kids, which I was fed up with. And looking back, I was probably like in a bit of a slump, but didn't really realize at the time, but I just didn't like work anymore. But I knew I was good, and Dan's good. And, so it was more about, I just want to get home. Like, I just want to be at home. And then if it doesn't work, what's the worst case scenario? I'll get a job, go back to London. So we started, but my aversion to any form of commitment and ties, I was like, we'll never hire people. I'm just going to sit in my room and work jobs. And I'm going to take the kids to school. I'm going to pick them up. I'm going to see my missus. And that's it. And that's all we did for 6 years.
So I'm just going to bill. I'm going to rope them. I'm going to do that 360
We did nothing else.
Earn great money, and that's it.
So 2014, end of 2014 till beginning of 2021, it was me and Dan.
What sort of numbers were you doing a year?
A lot. 1.5-ish. Between us, pretty much year on year. Sometimes not as good, sometimes better. But like we had no overheads. Yeah. We had a basic LinkedIn. We didn't have the big ticket recruiter. We had the light. I think at the time it was like 70 quid a month. And he worked from his house. I worked from my house.
So you're leveraging. We
used a mobile phone. So our desk costs a month was like £70 plus a phone bill.
So you're leveraging network, experience, expertise, and joy to make as much money as you possibly can.
Yeah,
building that balanced lifestyle business, if you like.
Yeah, we moved to Devon. I'd get up in the morning, do an hour, take the kids to school, come back, work all day, go and pick them up, come back, work the rest of the day, go to the gym, come home, turn off. Or if we were doing New York stuff, keep going, rinse, repeat. And I didn't want to do anything else.
What hours were you doing then to get to build that sort of level?
A lot, depends. I'd say a normal day was 7 till 10 with breaks. So I'd go and get the kids, or I'd go to the gym, or we'd have dinner. But I was in the house. Yeah. So like I just saw them. And then that became whereas previously I'd had the association of work keeps me away from the kids. Now my association was work keeps me with the kids. But more than that, it's giving us now this awesome lifestyle. And then it was like, well, I'm just going to work and work and work and work.
Resonates so much for me. Very, very similar in that I had an op business. We moved out of offices, started working from home, started learning that I could have zero overhead and bill big numbers.
Yeah.
And then the kids came along and I was able to see them, spend time with them. And I'd do the same. My hours were 6:30 till 9:30, 10 o'clock typically. Not consistent because you'd go mad. But there was weeks when I wouldn't leave the house even to put the bins out because you're just on it. But you weren't doing it because you had to. You're actually doing it partly because you had to, but you're seeing the reward. You want to see it.
It's a big difference. It was a massive mindset shift for me, and it made me so much better. Like Huxley, I was good because I was new and I had a great sort of coach, team leader type thing. And the environment was so militaristic that if you survived there, you had to be good. Yeah. There wasn't really a middle ground. Start of May, my mindset shifted of I just started to see it as a drag. It was a takeaway from the things I actually wanted, which was just to be with my kids. And then all of a sudden it was like, wow, this is now giving me everything I wanted, because it was completely structured around my life. It was like the ultimate lifestyle business. And that then became the driver of so again, looking back, we'd be on holiday and we'd be out for dinner, and then I'd be up and off because I had to do a call. And it was all encompassing. And my missus, Jess, she's like the patience of a saint. So she just she accepted it from day one, but it was just normal. But
the returns are worth it. Lucy's the exact same. Yeah. I work every day. There's no off from it because you are the person that's managing it. But that works if you're earning enough. The problem is when you're doing that and the rewards aren't there, that becomes a real challenge.
This is why hedge funds. Because what's the point of, if you do it in a bank for an average fee of 15, 20 grand, you do it in a fund for an average fee of 40, 45, 50 grand. The level of rigor to do it is a little bit higher, but actually the people are better to deal with. They're easier to deal with as long as you're on the level, as long as you know enough. So I've personally focused on a big investment in my own knowledge of the markets and of technology. And my goal was always put myself in a position where every time I speak to someone, they go, that's the best recruiter I've ever spoke to. Right. And I was like, if I do that, I'll be fine. And then that translated into just we were doing deals, between the two of us, we're doing 7, 8, 9 deals a month. And
that's amazing.
It was awesome. It was really good, really, really great time for both of us. Well, certainly more for me, because I was Dan was a little bit.
Where's he live? Where's Dan live?
At the time he was in Suffolk. And then end of 2019, Dan always wanted to grow the business. Right. And I always said no, because I had this aversion to being in an office. By that point we had 3 kids. So I was like, until Maggie's in school, I'm not going nowhere. And I didn't think we would be able to grow a business fully remotely in the hedge fund kind of model, which is interesting given where we've ended up. But Dan always wanted to grow the business. So end of...
Is he the same age, are you?
A little bit older than me. He'd been in recruitment longer. I was loving life in the mix of it all. He was getting a bit tired with just being hands-on and wanted the next thing. So he says, are we going to grow the business? I said, no, it's never going to happen. And he said, right, well, I'm going to move to Italy then, because we can do this job from anywhere. I'm bored. It's just him and his then partner on their own, no kids, no family close really. So I was like, yeah, go, go to Italy. I'll come out. Everything's good. This was like November 2020. February 21, I rung him up. I found a guy we need to hire. So
cheers, Craig.
Yeah. So he was a bit like, you really? Where's this been? But it was very opportunistic. It was just a good young kid and like timescales aligned with COVID and all this stuff. And then that's kind of started the next phase of our business journey then.
So we'll come on to that in a minute, because this is the real crux of the story that really interested me. To give a bit of context, we obviously met while filming the RAG podcast a few months ago, and I was really just blown away with how you structure things and how your thought process and how it worked. Yeah. And I just thought, you know what, that's one of the most impressive stories I've ever heard, and we'll come on to it. And I know that
appreciate that.
Genuinely, mate, it just really, really impressed me. But before we talk about that, I think there's a really important part we're missing. You say the rigor in what you do is more intense, it's more structured. Is it, or is that how you do it? And if
no,
so,
it is.
Talk us through
it has to be
how's it different from a transactional, or not even a transactional, from a strategic relationship? How does what you do differ from a consultative relationship?
My knowledge of the fund world is they're very high performance environments. They hire the best people in the world, and they pay for it. So culturally, the way they operate is you're expected, if you don't know the answer to things, to ask intelligent questions, to go and find who you need to ask questions to, ask questions, get answers, deliver. Everything is just deliver. There's not really a place for people that come in and go through the motions or, need the handheld, need to be micromanaged. It's very much like you're here to contribute and add value.
We're paying you,
and
so
we
you
pay
deliver.
You for it. Basically, you do what you need to do. Hours aren't a thing. This has happened, it doesn't matter. It's about delivery. And understanding that environment, I learned really quickly with stakeholders, particularly the more senior or the closer to the trading side you get, that the more questions you ask, the less they buy into you, because they think you don't. In their head, it's like, well, you obviously don't know what you don't know the answers. Why don't I go and find someone who knows the answers? But also, if you're going to limit yourself to say like 3 questions, they better be good questions. Like they better be intelligent, well thought out, well structured. Because most agencies, every now and then, will sit on a briefing call with like 1 or 2 other agencies on it, and you can script out their questions. Can you wait a non-compete?
Why should they join you?
Where should I go and get people from? It's like that's your job.
Competitors.
Yeah, like that's so. I always wanted to position myself. I wanted to ask questions that would resonate with someone in the business, as this guy knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about, because I think a reputation will carry you quite a long way, particularly in that industry. So that requires quite a high level of knowledge about the subject matter. And then equally, in terms of the candidates, we're headhunters. I would say 95% conservatively of people we place are not looking for a job.
So that's even within network, out of network.
It's all just headhunts, network, people we know, referrals, or going and proactively targeting people and saying, look, contacting you for these reasons because of this, and this is why I think you should talk to me about it. Can we have a chat? But if you're then this person in Singapore or New York or whatever, says, fine, this sounds like high level interesting enough that I'm willing to talk to you about it, but I'm not looking for a new job. I'm very well looked after, well paid, I'm quite happy, blah, blah, blah. You've now got to represent that opportunity. You can't just go, well, it's paying up to this and it's this company. Then you're not going to get their buy-in, because they're like, well, I'm busy. Like, why would? And they're quite arduous interview processes. Lots of stages, testing, all this stuff, psychometric testing, technical testing, you name it, they typically do it. So you've got to get someone motivated enough to take time out of their busy day job that they're very happy in to go and do a really arduous interview process. If you don't understand why this might be a good opportunity for someone, and actually speak to someone and take time to listen to what they actually want from a role, not in terms of a skill, but like from life, like big ticket stuff, like progression opportunities, culture, financial onward progression opportunities, like all the myriad factors that go into something being a good job for someone. If you can't represent that, and then at the same time you talk to someone about, this is a role that sits in, I don't know, P&L attribution. If you can't talk to them about why that's important and what that means and what the project is, they're not going to buy into you. And I always just had the mindset of like, I just always had this thing of like, I just always want them to get off the phone going, that guy's really good. Because it's a marathon. Like, there's people that I've placed that I've known for 5 years.
Yeah. You strike me like that. From what I know, you love soaking up knowledge and thirst, and then you're able to articulate yourself excellently in terms of what you know and how you know it in a way that's easy to understand. That's what I've always took from you. And so genuinely, you are absolutely consulting and making sure you know every reason why this could be right for this person before you start trying to sell it to them.
Well, we don't sell it to them.
No, not selling. You don't need to sell it to them.
If it's not right, it's not right.
Yeah.
So we'll go back then. Okay, well, now I know what right looks like.
Yeah.
I won't bother you again until I have right.
Perfect.
But then that gets you the buy-in from people. And, most of my placements now just are through LinkedIn. I just post that I've got a job and people send me the seat. Like, people will call me and just be like, oh, do you think this is right for me? And, but that's come from having years and years of building the network up and doing a good job and being associated with like, he's not an idiot. Like
people know what you're talking about. The way you post, the way you present yourself, it's very clear that you're an expert in your area. And there's a reason I've been asking these questions, because it leads on nicely, because you obviously clearly know your shit, right? And you know your market, you know your industry. You're exceptionally successful in terms of their numbers are off the scale. And most people listening to this will be thinking, fuck it. To do that once or twice in a crazy market, okay, but year on year and consistently build. But then you've got to start a business.
Yeah.
Right? Which means you've got to take people on, which means your time is now going to be spent managing people, less away from billing, which I can see you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Right? You love the job.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah.
So how do you then make that transition? So what was the plan with RLS when you started it? And how did you make that transition across? And then we'll talk about how you've grown it from there.
We made the transition very painfully and very slowly. We did a really, looking back, a pretty horrendous job of it. In all honesty.
In what way?
Because I wasn't trying to be. I mean, we made a bunch of mistakes. So
you took this person on first of all.
No, so he's great. Will, yeah. He's still with me now. Right. He's awesome. He builds loads of money every year. He's become a leader in our business, and people go to him.
Top biller.
I think he won't be this year because I'm still billing, but he will probably be out of the team. He'll be top this year.
Still got that competitive streak in you.
I'm quite competitive. Yeah. No, I think this will be my last year. I think they'll all have me next year, but no. So he came in. Well, he was due to go to uni, and I just knew him from the gym. COVID hit. His uni got deferred by a year. He was working in a petrol garage that his family owned, but he'd been furloughed. So he's like, I've got nothing to do. I'm being paid. He's smart young kid, very mature, very motivated. So I said, look, come and work with us for a few months before you go to uni. You're getting paid by the petrol station. So we'll do no salary, commission only. We'll give you a big commission package. If you do any deals, you make some money. He did something like 3 or 4 deals in 3 months.
Wow.
So he would come to my house in the morning. We would do an hour training, and then I'd send him off and basically ignore him all day. So he'd be ringing me and I'd just ignore him. Or I'd give him like a quick, just go and work it out. But
sink or swim.
Yeah, he was very good. And then after a couple of months, he kind of said, look, I want to do this, but I'm a young guy. He was 19 at the time. I'm looking at 4 walls all day. I don't have a family. I need some social. So I was like, fine. We got a little office in town in Devon, hired some people. And then we went through from beginning of 21 till end of 23, basically a series of full starts where we were just hiring people that weren't great. We paid no attention to like internal structure. Me and Dan were at loggerheads all the time.
About what?
Because I was still very like, I still worked as if it was the first 6 years of just me and him billing. And he had kind of grown out of that a little bit. He didn't really want to do hands-on work anymore. And I was like trying to force it back because I was still in that mindset of like, it's just like deliver. Nothing's changed except there's a couple of new people around. There was no plan. There was no strategic, nothing. It all just happened by accident, essentially, which is ridiculous in hindsight.
You for meeting that one guy saying there's an opportunity here.
Yeah, and then he done well, and it's like, oh, well, we'll get some more. And then we had so Dan and I were clashing a lot because my head at the time was like, just get your head down and work. His perspective was different because he had a different perspective.
He's in Italy still.
So that didn't help either.
He can't manage right, so you're managing people as well.
So he's trying to train people like remotely and by VC and do a lot of stuff that doesn't need to be done in the room. I'm still in a mindset of I just want to bill, but now I've got all these people around, which was
How many do you have at this point?
I think at the height there was like 8 in there, which was just frankly like pissing me off more than anything else. So I just saw it again as like as a weight around the ankle sort of thing. It's just like an anchor of like, oh, now I have to be somewhere every day. And now all these people are like looking at me, and I'd had 6 years of no one needing anything from me. And so a combination of those factors made it quite difficult. And then also we had no comprehension of a structure or a plan, so we drifted a lot in those 3 years where headline wise, very successful. We were bringing people in off the street and they'd been in 300 grand in their first year. So,
and they were doing that because of the training.
Yeah. So, I'm very good at training people.
We'll talk about that in a minute, but
yeah. So they're coming in and being successful, but we're losing a lot of people who aren't successful. So we're keeping probably 2 out of 5, losing 3, but taking too long to lose them, kind of hoping that it's going to turn around.
And you're still having to do your numbers.
I'm still billing because that was kind of where my head was at, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. And then we'd say things like, right, I'd say I'm going to do this with you to the guys, like we're doing this on this time. And then a client would call. I'd be like, oh, I can't do it anymore, I'm doing this. So they're sat there like, there's no organisation, there's no structure. We moved offices up to Exeter to think, well, we'll go to a city, we'll get more people. We were there like a month, then we moved back because I was fed up of doing a 45-minute drive every day. I probably, in like brutal honesty, wasn't the easiest person to work with at that time because I think I have very high standards and I set them for myself and sort of live them. And I fell in a little bit of a trap of expecting everyone else to just immediately
happens all the time,
be at that level.
And you're in the top 0.01%, so no one's going to be at that.
This is what Dan would always say to me is like, look, the more you expect everyone to be the same as you, the more pissed off you're going to be because it's not going to happen. Everyone's different.
And you won't grow a business on that basis.
No. And he, I think, was much more on the wavelength of grow a business. I was on much more the wavelength of like deliver to clients at all costs. Doesn't matter what it takes, the hours, whatever. Like if you're here, you treat these jobs like they're your baby. And, which was that was my 6 years.
And they're all just doing, so it's rinse and repeat. So they are following your structure. We'll talk about your training in a minute. Yeah. But they are just 360 recruiters. You've given them the tools they need to do it. They're getting jobs. Jobs are coming in.
They're basically 180.
So the jobs are there.
The jobs are there.
You're teaching them how to fill the jobs.
They're just being plugged in. I'm teaching them how to fill it, how to talk to people.
So there's no strategy. There was
no
infrastructure.
No, nothing. And we, headline wise, we're turning over millions. We're billing loads of money. We've got all these trainees that are billing like really big numbers. And, anyone would look at that and go, they've really got it worked out. The reality is we didn't. It was a bit of a shit show, to be honest with you. It was just that the thing that we were really good at was the recruitment bit. So that was always fine, which I guess in the recruitment business is always fine. The things that we were rubbish at is anything that wasn't recruitment related, anything that wasn't specific to a client or filling a job, finance, ops, HR, admin, organization, anything. We were useless. And I was the most useless because I was so tunnel vision.
I hear this all the time.
Yeah.
You can't scale above a certain size on that basis. It's not.
We struggled to get more than
10.
Five good heads because I had like zero tolerance on if someone's going to turn up and bill 150 grand a year, it's not worth having them.
Yeah. So what changed? What? Because that's from where this is taking us to about 18 months ago. So
no, a year
ago.
Yeah.
And so what changed? Because you're now 16 heads in 3 continents.
So I don't really know. I do remember that at the beginning of the year, Dan and I had like the bust up of all bust ups. We've always had my wife's always said, me and Dan like a married couple, we'll say anything to each other. It never, we'll say something, we'll say the worst thing that you can say to someone, and then 5 minutes later call back, and it's never happened.
Yeah.
But we had like a monster bust up probably over nothing. And I think it was just a lot of residual frustration on both sides, where he had not lived up to my expectations for the last couple of years, because I just wanted him to, I was just bill. And I hadn't lived up to his expectations because I kept kicking off, moaning about people, firing people, and he's there like, look, I'm only in Italy because you told me we weren't going to do this. Then you've gone and done it. And now you're the one saying you don't want to do it anymore because everyone's pissing you off or whatever. So it was very combustible in that time. We were on different frequencies, and I think that was evident for everyone. And so we had this big bust up, and then we both kind of came back and said, this just has to stop now. Like, we either bin it and go our separate ways, or we find a common route forwards and we actually talk about what each other wants and listen. And when he said, I don't particularly want to be hands-on anymore, I had to sort of change my knee-jerk, which was like, why not? This is what we do. Like, so there was a much bigger perspective of trying to sit down and think about, well, what do we actually want? What are we trying to get to here? What's the goal? I think what I've learned over the last 4 years, so since Will joined, is at the beginning, I was all about me billing. That was my source of validation, happiness, me knowing that I'm doing a good job. Whereas now I get a lot more from them doing well. So it makes
just a mindset shift.
I think it's just happened over time. Like, I've seen these guys, and I said to them the other day, I don't think I'd ever bring another person into our office, because we're like a family.
How many's in the office?
There's 5 of us every day.
In Devon?
We're in 2 days a week. But there's 5 of us. And we're so like close. It sounds a bit woo-woo, but it's a brilliant dynamic. Everyone gets on. Anyone can say anything in front of each other. It's a great balance of personalities. We're very, very close as a collective. So I would be really wary of bringing anyone into that environment because I just if we hired someone else in the UK, we'd do it remotely. But we have grown in South Africa quite heavily for that reason. And I think my seeing them evolve over the last few years, and they had a bit of a rough ride of it at the beginning because I was quite hard. You see this really happy, lovely guy, I'm sure. But, it wasn't always roses, like in-house, in the environment. But I get so much more now out of them doing well. And I've started handing off some clients, and then, I get like key clients calling me saying like, I love Will, like he's amazing. Or Christy just done a call with this manager and like the feedback was unbelievably good. And, that gives me, I get so much out of that now. And that's been, I think, the biggest shift is I've started to derive like validation and a sense of achievement from helping people.
So you've got a team of 5 that are billing
in the UK, yeah,
and they're all billing big numbers.
Yeah,
you don't mind me sharing, but you say that they are in the high hundreds of thousands. They are billing decent numbers each.
Yeah, it's between probably 350 and 600,
right,
something like that per year.
So one question I'm going to ask is one thing that really fascinated me when we were talking was the training, how you train people and your philosophy on that.
Yeah.
And then how you manage to put it all together and train people, because you've got people in Asia, you've got South Africa, and you've got the UK, and it's a really cool structure, how it all feeds into each other.
Yeah.
Just talk us through that, because I think people would be really interested.
Yeah. So just to go back slightly. So one of the things that's happened this year is Dan has basically moved into much more of, I guess, like a COO type role, where operationally we've got, say, our Pakistan team that are very tech heavy. So they do a lot of focus on like business process management and orchestration of different tools, supporting, the front office essentially. I can't remember the last time I spoke to those guys. Dan kind of oversees that. He oversees South Africa. He's looking at more, how do you make the whole thing?
What does South Africa do? So the Pakistan do the data, the analysis.
So South African guys work with, where we're trying to get to is almost running our business like a hedge fund. So we want our UK recruiters to operate as portfolio managers. We want them to run desks. And we want them to build out pods and teams under them that will be driven predominantly by individuals in South Africa. These guys are great. They obviously speak English as a first language. Time zone is fairly well aligned. They're super smart, super hungry, really motivated, very, very, great work ethic, and they want to be successful.
Are they in an office together?
No, so they're all remote, mostly in Cape Town, but some are in Durban as well. We'll look at an office over time, but we managed to hire this lady called Carolyn, who's like, I think she was country manager for South Africa for Harley Davidson. And she's unreal. And she's been so this is one of the things that we actually did, is we'd start hiring in non-recruitment talent that have really helped us. So Carolyn runs South Africa and runs it largely in parallel with Dan. So Dan will put the recruitment steer on where we need to get to. She will then oversee what's going on, and she does a lot of our marketing and all this other stuff. So we've got the UK team that are like taking their South African guys and basically like steering them after a role, like pointing and shooting and saying, right, this is what we're working on. The training comes centrally from me and Dan to a lesser extent. So it's more driven by me, but most of it is done through Loom videos that are pre-recorded ages ago. And there's a very structured on-ramp program for anyone coming in where they have modules that they follow, which is to get them to a point where they can add value. And it starts very piecemeal, but the goal is that they will progress into being fully fledged recruiters in their own right. And we want to create like an entrepreneurial route for our UK guys and the South African guys over time, where, for argument's sake, if you're in the UK and you bring through a team of recruiters in South Africa, they progress up to the point where they can now build their own team and have their own desk. Our recruiters get a percentage ownership of that desk forever. Wow. So there's a route for them to generate, passive income and an ownership stake. And they know that what they're doing is for their own benefit financially, as well as to help us build the business. And ditto for the South African guys, that they'll have all the same opportunities. So we treat them exactly the same. They work the same jobs. They're trained the same way. We then use tech so there's a number of things that we use the tech guys for. My favorite is to do what we call client matrixing. So we'll go into a company that we're interested in working with, or just for some analytics. And our data team will pull the human data of everyone in technology that works for that company around the world. And then they will model common denominators related to like minimum academic standard.
Wow.
Technical, by tech breakdown, by area of the business, previous companies they've worked for, etc. They'll then send reports to our UK consultants to go, right, XYZ capital of the X amount of employees that they have in the business. They have like the minimum standard of education is this in these business areas. These are the tech stacks, and this is kind of where these people come from. This is the average tenure. So we build out these like candidate avatars essentially. And then we use the technology. So the consultants will build very, very condensed searches to find people that fall in that bracket. Then we'll use tech like Dripify to go to those people, not to try and like put them in automation, but say, hey, we work with, like, we've identified that there are clients who would be very interested in your background based on the fact that you've got this degree and you've got this and you've got this. If and when the time comes that you're interested in the market, come to us, because we've already pre-mapped you to clients, essentially.
So clever.
People then come, hey, I'm starting to look or whatever. And then we know already where, like, quantitatively they're a match. So then it's just working out qualitatively whether culture and progression and all this stuff aligns.
And that's where the recruiters come into it.
That's where the UK recruiters come in.
And so what you're effectively doing is building a community without people knowing they're in a community. because you're mapping them out and pre-aligning them to opportunities that you know are going to be there well before they're even looking.
It's using tech not to spam 10,000 people.
Yeah, so you're using to create touch points, not remove them.
It's to inform us. But it's to, my opinion of the whole automation and AI and everything else piece is use it to put the human at the forefront. Don't use it to take the human element out of recruitment. Because it won't,
you're creating the touch points. You use that to create a touch point with someone and inform touch points.
And it's compelling. Value. It's compelling for a candidate. If you're a high level guy and you get a reach out from an agency that say, hey, we work with 3 companies. We've ran, fairly detailed analytics on those firms, and they have the following common denominators related to hiring, which means if you were to look at that company, you'd be in good company. You'd be in people from similar backgrounds, similar academic standards. It would also be very fertile ground in that they would be interested in talking to you. The only thing to work out is actually under the hood to match up. People love that stuff because they're like, I haven't been approached like this before. Normally, it's just someone spams me a spec and they say, would you be interested, yes or no? And you never hear from them again.
When you first told me this, that's what I was saying. I was blown away because it was like you're so far ahead of the curve in what you're doing. And so now you effectively have got a really, really slick team in 3 continents, all remote, apart from this office that are hybrid in the UK, which are all delivering massive numbers. And they're delivering them because they've got everything they need structured around them. And it's really scalable. So
it's very plug and play.
Where does it go? What's Craig? So Craig, right, and what do you want to be achieving in the next few years? Where do you want to go with it?
So our goal for next year is to get to, we want to hire 12 additional heads in South Africa. So it's 3 per quarter. So our average training program, sort of the iteration of the training is about 3 months. It's very training heavy at the beginning. So we want to be doing an onboarding of 3 new consultants, every quarter. Those people will then feed into our UK recruiters, and that gives enough time for the people as they feed in to kind of come up to be, not too much of an administrative burden on the UK guys. They'll know what they're doing and they'll be pretty capable. So that's the immediate goal. The next goal is we'd like to hire a couple of senior UK recruiters that are very good in our space because we've just got like too many jobs. And I think there's quite a nice opportunity there for some people where we can say, look, someone who's got a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, but maybe doesn't want to go fully on their own, or there's not really a need. So our sort of offering to a senior person in a company is, look, you can work remotely, you can structure around your life. We don't have hours, we don't have leave allowance. Like, we treat you like an adult. We expect you to perform like an adult as well, but we can set you up with an infrastructure in South Africa and a technology function that will underpin you, that will basically like 10x your leverage than you would have in a company. But you can sit at home, and we pay really well on the commission side. Like, our model is pay people really well and then they're going to be happy. And that's really what we're trying to do. So a couple of senior UK recruiters next year, ideally 3, 12 new heads in South Africa this time next year. If we're there, that'd be pretty happy. And then at that point, I think an evaluation, we don't want to take over the world. We don't want to be a 200, 300 person company, but we do want to create something that is bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
That can give us a lifestyle, but more importantly, that can give the team, we've got one of our ladies is a single mum. Her day is very structured around her little boy, and rightly so. And she's earning 6 figures a year, but she's also completely
and she's
flexible.
Enjoying it. She's flexible
and she's happy.
So why would you start on your own? You don't.
But that now is the thing for me that's shifted. Of I get my happiness from saying we've taken these local people and we've given them a platform to be very successful financially, to become really capable as humans as well as in the job, but works with their lives.
It's phenomenal to hear. So you've taken what you loved about it, what you didn't, created a model where you can shed that out. Do you know what? And I'm conscious of time because we've got to have to wrap up.
Probably go like 10 minutes over.
Okay, so
I'll ring the place and just say 15 minutes late. I'd say 20.
What time is it now?
We'll 20, 25 past.
We'll cut this out. So we'll wrap up in the next 5.
10. Give us 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes. Yeah, no, that's fine because it's a brilliant. There's so much value in this; it's unbelievable. So we can cut that out and just continue on.
Keep it in, fuck it.
Fucking right. Yeah. Look, yeah, here we go. Blooper's real.
Who cares?
No, mate, I'm happy if you are. So that is phenomenal. So then you're now at a point where you had what's going through my head, and I'm looking at you. You had 6 years of being really comfortable on your own.
Yeah.
And you loved that part of it. You then went through a little bit of a transition of a couple of years. And you now strike me that you're in that spot again, but with a different business growing.
Yeah.
And so how are you going to then let go of certain elements of the leadership? You're going to need to bring people in at points as you get bigger, and your role will change again. Have you thought about how you're going to evolve with that?
We've already started doing it. Like, another criticism that someone would probably level at me over the last 3 years is I tried to control everything, because I fell into the trap a little bit of thinking that I have all the answers, because I'd been bootstrapped over 6 years where everything was working brilliantly. But all of my answers were wrapped up in just doing deals and delivering to clients. So that came out of it where I had to be across everything. But what was happening is all these other things that I was putting myself in the middle of and being across, I then didn't do because a client would call.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, well, I want to do that.
Yeah.
So things would get pushed, things would get ignored. I would say to Dan, like, I need you to do these things. And then I go and do them anyway. And he'd be like, look, and I think communication, he was remote. We were all in the office. So our communication we had no structure. It wasn't good. And that caused a lot of issues in our growth. This year, I've had some kind of stuff outside of work to deal with, family stuff, which has reframed my focus a little bit, in a sense of, actually, I know what I'm really good at now, which is the job and training people how to do the job. I also know that I'm pretty shit at most other things. So I've realized, actually, by just years of stress and failing at things, what's the point of me getting involved in that stuff? Dan, on the other hand, doesn't really want to do the job anymore. He wants to do all the other stuff because he's been doing it for a long time, and he was looking for that fresh challenge and, bit of vigor again. So he's now got a large sphere where you'd say he's probably not in recruitment anymore, in the sense of he's trying to fill jobs, and he's dealing with some clients for sure. And he's also a bit of a face that will go out and do new business and stuff like that, because he's been around a long time and, people know him. But day to day, he's much more operational. We've hired Carol in South Africa, who's our head of South Africa. She's also our head of marketing. She's got a background in marketing. So she's, anything that falls under the operational management leadership of the South African business, logistics, marketing, etc., I don't touch. Carolyn completely looks after that. And she's a million times better at it than I am. So I'm quite happy with that.
That's taken you to another level,
Yeah, and then we've got Shmook, who runs Pakistan. So this guy used to work for like S&P, the ratings agency, which is like a massive, he used to work for those guys. So he's bringing an understanding of like, well, what can you do with technology? Like, what can you do with data analytics? Because that's his world. But that's Dan's side of the fence. And I'm a lot more comfortable now in sort of going, that's not my side of the fence anymore. And I'm happy with that, and I can just let that be, because I trust it. Whereas I'd say up till this year, it wasn't I didn't trust it, but I was just like, I had to do everything.
So and I see this a lot, you become a bottleneck in your own business.
I was.
And so by taking yourself out, bringing in a leadership team, which is what I created Beyond the Founder, right? Because you cannot do what you're doing if it's all on you. But you're lucky you've got Dan. Most people haven't got a Dan to do the operational side.
But for years, I was like, why is he not just doing what I'm doing? Yeah. We've also got so up until the beginning of this year, there wasn't a CV that went out the door that I didn't personally sign off on. So
wow, that's nuts.
I became, because I was like, quality control. Clients will never get a CV that's wrong, ever. It will never happen. It can't happen. It will be a disaster. But then I became a bottleneck. So we get to the end of the week and all the guys will be like, you've got like 6 CVs for me that you need to review and tell me, because I need to know whether I'm sending them out or not. And then again, it was like beginning of this year, and it was like, we need to address this. Like, you either trust them or you don't.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and again, taking that shackle off, as I look at our metrics, everything's gone better.
Yeah.
They've built more money.
You've moved out of the way of your business. You've employed the right people. Your leaders are brilliant. It's great.
A little bit of it is the ego, though. A little bit of it is like, not the ego of like, we can't have other people that are doing good. Like, I get so much joy from them doing good. But it's like the fear of what happens if I don't try and control it.
But the irony, Craig, is that you're never going to scale the business successfully.
No,
it depends on you. You've got to get.
That's what I've learned.
It's got to come off you, and you've got to let these guys flourish.
But that's been the biggest change this year, is push and pull. A lot of people have pushed that onto me of like, you're actually becoming a bit of a pain in the arse now, mate. Like, as good as you are at this bit, you're becoming quite annoying because you're just on one all the time. And I sort of tried to apply a Huxley mindset to it, which was very militant. But equally for me as well, I think I just reached a level of maturity of where we're at. And actually, like, we've got a business that's purely by, write it on the back of a fag packet, cross your fingers, just do your best. We've actually got to a point where we've got fantastic people, especially the guys in the UK that have been with us for a while. Everyone else has only joined this year, but those guys, I would put them up against any other recruitment consultant anywhere in the world. They are so good. And you realize actually that those years of struggle over the last 3 years or so has given us this kind of gem.
Yeah.
But it needed a bit of polish.
Yeah.
And it needed to be dug out of the ground a little bit. So Caroline come in, Schmook came in. We've hired this lady called Christelle, who's like a general manager. Brilliant. She used to kind of run an 800
Is she in the UK
person.
or?
She's in South Africa, but she used to run like an 800 person org for Computer Center. So she knows how communication lines should be structured. She knows how a bigger business operates.
Succeed,
So she's coming in with all these ideas. And actually, it's the age old, hindsight's 2020. Oh, I wish we'd just done this ages ago. But I'm, as I was saying to you earlier, a hell of a lot happier.
Yeah.
Because I just kind of do the stuff that I'm good at now. And that's translating in the guys are all happier. They're getting better. Dan's happier. He's doing stuff that's really motivating and challenging for him. We've got all this stuff that now happens without me. And it contributes to the thing that I am focused on, and it lifts us up. So it's been wins all round, but that was the biggest lesson, is like, let go of, have an honest conversation with yourself about where do you add value and where do you not? And then strategically replace yourself where you don't add value with people that can.
Do you know what? I always finish, and I'm not finished, but I always finish with a question, right?
Right.
And you don't know this. That question is, what do you wish you'd have known sooner?
Oh, there you go.
You've just answered it.
There you go. Yeah.
You've just answered it.
Yeah.
So just say that again. Just clearly.
Yeah.
Identify where you're.
Yeah. I think if you have that honest conversation of what's the value that I bring, my value is I'm very, very good at training people in how to recruit within our niche. Probably not so good training people to do something else in recruitment, but in our niche, I know my stuff. I'm good at dealing with clients. I'm good at dealing with candidates. I'm good at moving things forward. So how do I spend 80% of my time doing the highest value tasks relative to my skills? And then all these other tasks that I was trying to do, how do I find people whose biggest value add is those areas? And I bring them in to do that. And then guess what? They're actually better at it than I am. And it has it lifts everything up. So it's been brilliant, and I'm, as you can tell, like I'm happy. I'm motivated by it. I'm excited by it,
I can feel the passion. I can feel it.
Yeah.
The passion of you.
But if we had sat here a year ago, you wouldn't have got it.
But I think it's a classic. It's a brilliant story, and it's something that so many people can learn from, because what you've done is you've taken that classic thing, and how you've managed it is irrelevant. You've managed it, and now you're flying. You're absolutely flying. You've taken all those lessons over the years, applied them, worked to your strengths, and you're flying.
Yeah. We're in a good spot at the moment, and I think we have something quite compelling for people coming in. Like, we have a legit opportunity.
Yeah.
For people, whether it's South Africa, whether it's the UK, and Dan and I are quite unified. The one thing we've always been very unified on is how do we make the best possible opportunity for the team? It's not about how do we get the team to make the most money for us. That's not
that comes with it. If you do your job properly and you run the business properly, that will happen anyway.
Yeah.
That's not obviously, if that was your job, you'd have carried on doing what you were doing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's now, and that extends out to our team in South Africa. And if we can hire these people in the UK, like, I think we have something that's quite compelling.
And one thing I will ask, because you said you're looking for some great people potentially next year and you've got such a fantastic proposition. If people do want to reach out to you and contact you, what's the best way of them to do that?
LinkedIn, probably. My contact details are all over it anyway. So if someone wants to find me, they can find me. But LinkedIn's probably best. But yeah, yeah.
Mate, I'll tell you what, this has been phenomenal. I can't believe time has gone so quickly.
Tell me about it.
I know, but I've really enjoyed it. I'm going to thank you so much. And you know what? At some point in the future, I will definitely ask you to come back when you say you don't want world domination. I think that might change in the next few years.
See what happens, mate.
All right, mate. It's been brilliant.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the show. I really hope you enjoyed it. First and foremost, we always try to add value to our audience, be it a founder looking to scale or a leader looking to progress up the chain in the agency world. And if we can do this in a way that is easy to watch and entertaining, then for me, that is job done. Once again, thanks for listening, and until next time.